It shouldn't even cross your mind that, you know, like your identity should get in the way of your education.
Why are we having an implementation of a compulsory LGBT education and a transgender orientated education going hand in hand with it? And of course, in time, we're probably going to see a feminist orientated element to our education system, all under these fucking guises of normalizing and accepting and becoming more tolerant to said identities. Anyway.
LGBT Youth Scotland and the Scottish Trans Alliance published guidance for schools in 2017 regarding supporting transgender young people. It includes suggestions for overcoming barriers such as respecting a young person's gender identity and the facilities they want to use, and ensuring pupils can compete in their sporting category of choice. But campaign group Women and Girls in Scotland say this hasn't fully taken into account the needs of other protected groups of young people.
Before this video goes any further, the main reason that a lot of people have an issue with the transgender guidelines that were published by the campaigners and activists is because of the fact that boys declaring themselves to be transgender could quote unquote invade girl only spaces, and obviously feminists don't like that notion. I have my own issues with the transgender guidelines, such as the elephant in the room, obviously being, of course, that these guidelines reinforce children who, for whatever reason, declare to be something other than the sex they were born as, instead of waiting till they reach a certain age and seeing if the problem is still occurring within that child / teenager, and then if so, moving forward with whatever you see fit. Instead of that, if a 6 or 7-year-old says that there's something other than the gender / sex they were born as, these guidelines, these implementations, and the fucking rule book help to reinforce the child's confusion, all under the guise of being there for the child / people. It's pretty fucked up, if you ask me. It also says, regarding primary school children, so for anybody that's not from the UK, that's kids from about 4 or 5 to about 12, so arguably 12-year-olds or 11-year-olds, this sort of thing, you could get away with teaching, but to a bunch of kids that aren't even on double digits, there's no justification, but yet, I can't say that because that's somehow transphobic. So we've got recognition and development of gender identity can occur at a young age, according to them, with improved awareness of trans identities, and this is for my bugbear immediately. You're not even 2 sentences in and already there's a major red flag there, because we have gone well past what was ordinarily being normalised, which was of course demedicalising transgenderism and making it seem as if there's nothing wrong with being a transgender. And then we start to see the encroaching of gender identity or identities, the ideology, all under the guise of being inclusive for transgenders. So it's only a matter of time till the infinite spectrum of exploration will be included, or at the very least will be there. The door will be open for kids to go further down the rabbit hole if they wish. You know what I mean? An increasing number of young people are coming out as transgender in primary school. Kids are coming out and self-declaring to be mentally ill. It makes no fucking sense, unless of course you demedicalise it, but just because you've demedicalised it, it's still a mental illness. There's no getting away from that fact. Primary schools need to be able to meet the needs of these children to ensure they have a safe and inclusive, respectful environment, blah, blah, blah. And of course, one of the things that they plan to do, or are suggested in doing, is raising children or teaching children the classroom without gender stereotyping or gender segregating. So again, it reeks of feminism, but it seems as if they're going to teach children in a gender-neutral environment just on the off chance there might be a transgender in the room, and the likelihood of that is near enough zero until they implement these changes to the academia. And of course, my other major bugbear with this, of course, is the fact if a young person transitions at school, other learners and staff will most likely be aware of their gender history. Similarly, if a young person has a non-binary gender identity, being open about this will mean other learners and staff know that the young person is transgender. Transgender and non-binary are two different things because one is a mental illness and one doesn't exist. However, trans learners who join your school after transitioning may want to keep their gender history private, and this should be respected, okay? If a child in the school says that they want to live as a different gender, it's important to provide support and listen to what they're saying. Teachers in schools should be confident in discussing this with the child and, with the child's consent, their family. So if the child doesn't give consent, then it gets to stay confidential. How cute is that? That is insidious. It's fucking insidious because why on earth would kids, left, right and centre, start declaring to be something other than what they are? Isn't it convenient that this seems to be on the rise as this becomes more and more socially accepted? It's fucked up. Anyway, I've digressed. So,
it potentially breaches the Equality Act. It infringes on the rights of girls, and it could potentially be very harmful to girls. Now, there is no need to...
Oh yes, that's right, because feminists believe that all boys are pure evil. Toxic masculinity is rampant in society. I forgot that. Misogyny is everywhere.
Infringe on the rights of girls to meet the needs of children who identify as trans, and discussing this openly should not be a problem.
Their concerns stem from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Article 2 states a girl has a right to request privacy, whilst LGBT youth guidelines say objections to sharing facilities with a male-bodied young person is disrespectful and based on misconceptions.
And the fact we are even having this discussion really just sums up the fucking political climate that Scotland has found itself in. The LGBT guidelines. A bunch of campaigners and feminists have got together to draw up little fucking how-to guides and rules and regulations for the rest of society to follow, and that includes obviously the academia. Sturgeon and the rest of the Scottish government bend over backwards, drooling at the prospect of preaching to the world that we're all about equality and progression, thus allow these people to run riot in terms of their demands, and of course we have to then take their bullshit as gospel. They're a bunch of gay / lesbian or whatever activists. They have no authority as far as I'm concerned. They're taxpayer funded for the most part, so they're no different to any other organisation out there. An LGBT organisation shouldn't dictate what happens in society. So that just really puts the onus back on the Scottish Government that this is allowing to be a conversation that we're having at this point in time. Why should a transgender child or transgender children or non-binary, the non-existents, decide themselves that they wish to self-declare to be something other than what they are? It's taken seriously by teachers, staff, etc. because the LGBT Youth Scotland guidelines say that that's what they have to do. And as a result, it could in turn allow boys to enter girl-only spaces. And of course, let's not forget that they're on the verge of making it easier to become a transgender and or a non-binary, as they wish to normalise and legalise that as well, because we're all about equality and progression here in Sturgeon's intersectional Scotland. So of course, not only now are you going to have a bunch of boys who could potentially declare to be transgender willy-nilly, you're also going to have to deal with the problem of boys declared to be non-binary or two-spirit demi-fluid butch or any of the other made-up fabricated gender identities to choose from. What kind of worms you people have opened up? It's quite funny though to watch the left eat its own in this regard, feminists versus transgenders, because which one is it? Either there is a real problem with misogyny and toxic masculinity and all boys are rapists in waiting, or you're talking bullshit. Because if it's true that boys are all the negative connotations under the sun, then surely there should be no guidelines being put in place that makes it easier for boys to act upon these so-called negative connotations. And as well, why is it that these LGBT brigade, the activists, etc., who claim that if they don't implement their proposals, their laws, their regulations, then the bullying, the marginalisation and the discrimination will just get worse, because it's always the case. And then, of course, in the next breath, they then go out of their way, basically, to create animosity and single these people out. And, of course, what I'm referring to in that regard is if a transgender wishes to use a different washroom or a different changing facility to where he should be or she should be, then they get to do as they please. And if any pupil has an issue with the transgender's demands, then they have to have a timeout and be lectured all about the ethos of the school. That's the guidelines. That's what the guidelines state. So, in one breath, you're all about trying to make Scotland more tolerant, but you're going out of your way to piss people off.
Concerns have also been raised that the impact on transgender young people has been assessed, whilst the impact on other groups has not been fully checked. The Children and Young People's Commissioner has now written to the Scottish Government asking for a comprehensive assessment to be undertaken before the guidance is further promoted.
We would facilitate that happening so that trans young people today in schools across Scotland were able to tell the Scottish Government what their experiences are, what their needs are, and that can sit alongside the needs of other young people. I think what teachers are seeking to do is to meet the needs of all of the young people in their classrooms, and what we're trying to do is support them with that job.
22-year-old Austin Ferguson visits schools to give advice and believes these guidelines are a huge step in the right direction.
I think it's great that young people now have the confidence to talk about how they feel and come out and stuff like that, which is absolutely amazing. And the fact that it's being taught might make them feel less alone, I suppose.
What's being taught? Why don't you elaborate what's being taught, buddy? Because we're not being taught about the fact that there's nothing wrong with being transgender. Said there's a little dangerous addition to that of normalising transgenders, and that is, of course, the ideology that's creeping in all the time in the background. So, we've gone past normalising transgenders to going so far as to allow children to socially transition as soon as fucking possible, and it won't be too long before we allow children to explore the wonders of the infinite spectrum in Rainbow Unicorn Land. That is, of course, Scotland.
Because they have something that they can relate to.
The Scottish Government say because it's not their publication, it would be inappropriate to undertake any review.
They should have taken a review the minute these guidelines were published, considering these guidelines could potentially be the fucking guidelines that will be implementing the academia, or changes to the academia, influencing the academia and the education and the curriculum. You'd think that would be the first thing the Scottish Government would do. It's all very well and good to say you're not going to undertake a review because it's not your guidelines, but you're quite prepared to back the guidelines. You're quite prepared to spew out your fucking bullshit about how Scotland's lefty and lovely and all things progressive and nice and unicorn, when in reality, I mean, the fact of the matter is they haven't even reviewed the concerns in the guidelines. They've just given the green light. So realistically, these campaigners and activists could have put whatever the fuck they want in these guidelines, and Nicola Sturgeon, the fucking feminist that she is, would have given it the green light regardless, because it's progression. What a joke, man. A shambolic joke the Scottish Government has become in recent times, eh?
And they continue to fully support the guidance.
How can you support guidance that you've not reviewed? Or am I missing the point here? Anyway, this video's getting too long. Peace.